Good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock on October 7th, and we're excited to be here again for another COPEC Daily Financial Wellness live streaming discussion. Today, we've got Kip Morse, and he is going to be talking with us about culture and office environments and things like that. And it's really going to be an exciting discussion. Looking forward to it. First of all, before we get started, I want to make sure that we go over a couple of the pieces of information on disclosure and about COPEC. COPEC is a nonprofit organization, and in front of you right now is a full disclosure, making sure that everybody understands what COPEC is, what the speakers, who they represent, affiliated companies, and myself being on the board and the president of COPEC. I also have additional disclosure regarding our company. So we wanted to make sure that information is out there. And feel free, if you want to look at additional information on this, you can go to the COPEC website at www.copeceducation.org. And at the bottom, there's a disclosure statement that you can click on and get. Without no further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring in Kip. So Kip, if you could join us, and I think we are going to be talking about culture in the work environment, right? I mean, last time we talked about character, and I think that was a really great discussion. And I think if anybody that's listening to this hasn't heard that, just go into the library and check it out. Those are being recorded. But I think one of the biggest things in culture, we talk a lot about, transparency and a lot of the different things that goes into it. What are we going to talk about today, Kip?
Well, yeah, I mean, I enjoyed really talking about the character component. I think we laid out that how important high character leadership is. Without that, you really can't get to the next level. And so the next level is, okay, if you've got a real focus on character, then how does it look in building that out within a culture of an organization? And so, when you were talking about, financial side of these conversations, you are going to be more successful as an organization, as an individual, if you focus on the culture of your organization. And that's the critical component that the BBB brings, is that you need to choose a culture of trust. And, I'll share with you a little bit of the reason why, a little description that we have in our workbook that anybody can have access to free of charge. It kind of walks you through a lot of different opportunities to engage your staff. But basically, the clarity of purpose, empowering employees, and opportunities for growth help an organization create a culture of trust. And this includes uniting your team around your organization's vision and mission statement, and empowering employees to help shape the expectations and culture of your organization. So when you say culture, it means involving more than the leader in the conversations. And so when you say transparency, when we were going through the April, May, June of COVID, as an organization, I thought it was critical during our staff meetings that I shared with them where we were financially and what we were doing with our stress budget to address the different issues and how we were faring on a monthly basis, so that they weren't sitting back wondering whether there were going to be staff cuts, whether they had a job, what things were going to look like in the future. And as we got into July and August, and we were doing very well, and the work that was taking place was off the charts in terms of how hard they were working, they came back and said how much they appreciated that I was transparent with them, and our leadership team was sharing with them, where we were, and then we were asking for feedback from them relative to where their pains were, where they were being overworked, what better ways we could be working. And so that involvement was kind of, right at the front end of building a culture that is constantly changing. You've never arrived at a perfect culture in an organization.
Now, that's interesting. You say changing. If you do a great job with transparency and building a culture with, like we talked last time, with people with great character, those changes are easier to go through, right? I mean, that's the whole point, is most people, they fear the unknown. So the more that you're transparent, the more that you build that culture and that inclusion, when you do need to make a change, they're more apt to participate versus, buck the system, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks right into, why we have a B2B trust score. And it's an employee assessment tool that enables you to ask them relative to, character, culture, community, customers. How do the employees feel about it? I mean, ultimately, you want to be able to measure, are you as an employee, or are your employees willing to go out there and champion your organization on a scale of 1 to 10? They're 9s and 10s. I mean, they're out there saying, you should work here, you should do business here, this is the best place to work. And if they're at a 5, 6, 7, they're not going to tell anybody about it. If they're lower than that, they're causing you harm. And so you need to know that. And once you engage them in that conversation, then just like you said, all of a sudden they want to be involved. They appreciate being involved. And then when you have to change direction and start to move in some different directions, like we are right now, at the BBB, we understand that the same way of reaching businesses is not going to work. They're busy, they're out and about, they're getting inundated through emails. So we're shifting, and we're going to have account reps that are given to each business, so that we can walk them through where are they on the continuum of building their better business. How can we help and plug in when they need us to, instead of when we think it's a good time to send out a benefit to them. So when we do that, that means changes in staff, changes in how we budget, and they're involved in that conversation. I threw out some of those ideas relative to how I thought we needed to change, and a couple employees developed a deck that they presented back to us based on what they heard without us even asking them, because they feel compelled to be involved in the conversation. If it's top down, you will miss so many opportunities to get a really excited staff and culture built within your organization.
It's kind of interesting because, we talk about the financial aspect of this, and this is a great conversation of a leader, but to the employee, and you brought a really good point there, is that it is a cycle. If the leader of the organization does a really good job at providing that inclusion and that transparency, hiring people of good character that interact with each other, not only are you going to get them to want to do well for themselves, but do well for you, they're going to be rewarded because it incentivizes them to actually want to grow and expand their capabilities and their, potentially advancement in an office. I think of also this side that, in our industry, we, not only do we want employees that want to work with you and that want to make other people feel like, wow, I'd love to work there too, but we talk a lot about how people that actually use your services, whether it's the people that might be coming to you trying to figure out why is this company, maybe it's a complaint, maybe it's a company, maybe whoever it is you're working with. In our area, when you said 5 or 6, if you're doing poorly, you're going to lose clients. If you're at a 5 or 6, you may keep clients and you may keep employees, but it's not until you get up at those higher levels at that 8, 9, 10, where you actually get people saying you should work here, or you start getting referrals because, man, that person I worked with on the phone, or that person that came out to my office, they were awesome, they were incredible, and I told somebody else about it. So we talk about the financial benefit, whether you're a business owner or employee. Think this through, basically.
Yeah, and they're gonna, when you get to that marketplace trust, because you've done the hard work, they're gonna forgive you for a mistake here or there, because they know that the hard work that you put in, the trust that you've built. And that's why, we put so much emphasis on trust, because there's so much that goes into building that. And what you don't want to have happen is to do a lot of superficial things, and the first time something takes place that you need to address, either with your staff or with a customer or with the community, you've got to be in a position of trust. And if you haven't done that, then it's going to be that much more difficult. Could be devastating to your organization. So, I mean, yeah, I think that's critical. And, what we've tried to do, if this is new to people, And they're like, well, okay, I get it, but I don't really know how to engage my staff on that. We have provided resources. We've got, tenets for building a culture of character. I'll throw out a couple just to give you a sense of what I mean. So, we define our goals and make a plan to achieve them. Seems kind of basic, but in one of my first assessments I did with my staff, they understood the goals of the team and how it led to the organization, and they understood the goals of the organization, but feedback was, I don't really understand what I'm doing, how it ties to my team and the bigger picture. So we worked very hard to make sure that they understood, or we changed what they were doing, but they understood that how it connects so that they feel more compelled and more a part of the bigger picture. We mentor as well as train. If you look at that and check that off, great. If you look at that and go, we do some training when we onboard them, but we don't really have any way of mentoring anybody through the process, you can develop something for mentoring. We use our own high character as an influence to those around us to work toward high character. Are you leading by example? Is your leadership team focused on that? Those are some different things that we provide you as a way of evaluating, are you being intentional? Are you doing things that are intentionally going to drive a better day tomorrow than you had today? And those are all free resources that you can utilize. And again, like we said, it's we do the assessment the next year, and we've addressed the issues on goals, and we get feedback that we need to be more community oriented and more in tune with the community. And that helps build culture, because you've got people that all of a sudden can be on a committee or on a group that helps the entire staff align with a nonprofit and get involved in a community service project. It brings up everybody's morale. They like being a part of the organization. I mean, there's some very specific ways that you can grow in a very, quick time frame. And with COVID, my gosh, I mean, the pressures are there to do that even more, and it's even more difficult. But if they see how hard you're working towards that, there's going to be even more benefit, because they know it's difficult and they know that you're trying hard to develop that culture.
So, sometimes, and you mentioned some of the tools and things of that nature, it doesn't matter if it's really elementary. It doesn't have to be this rocket science equation, employee times 2 divided by the space of your, or whatever. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be real simple. And even the most simple things, when you lay that out and have everybody participate in it, they even may think it's simple initially, but you're all on the same page regardless. And isn't that the whole point of this?
Yeah, absolutely. And it also, it's critical. Again, we started out by saying that we've already talked about character. Character within a culture and an organization is critical, because if you're trying to build a culture and you've got somebody that's poking you at every meeting and causing problems at every meeting, and they're acting in low character, it's going to bring everybody else down. So when you lay out what you stand for, what you want to, how you want to lead, and what kind of a culture you want, others will come to you and say, that's great, but the way this individual is acting is keeping us from ever achieving what we want to do. And so it brings to light the real problems within the organization, and those have to be addressed and dealt with.
So let's say that somebody is running an organization, or they're a manager of a team or whatever that might be, and they get to a point where they're realizing we've got some issues here. We've got some issues between, I mean, you tell me, drama, or maybe this person did something, or there was theft, or whatever it is. And this environment needs a reboot, right? How would you recommend kind of taking that, assessing it, and transitioning to that to a more healing situation? Because like you said, if you have the wrong person doing the wrong things, they have to be dealt with. And we know what that ultimately could mean, but what could it also mean as far as like the resetting of the environment?
Yeah, so there's really two ways to go about that, and I've had to do both of them. And the first one is that, as a leader, you should never allow someone to come talk to you about somebody else and expect that you're going to go to that other person and get it rectified, because it won't happen. You'll be bouncing around trying to make everybody happy, when ultimately, what I do now, they come in and say, I've got a problem with so-and-so. I pick up the phone and they know what I'm doing. I say, well, stick around. That person's coming on in. We're going to have a conversation. So you get them right there on the spot. And then the other thing is, since we have a leadership character framework and we've defined what treating people with respect and what integrity and what honesty, we define what that means, and we stand for something. We send out to the leadership team and to the staff an opportunity to say, hey, everybody, we're going to be meeting. Take a look at this, and we're going to talk around about what are 3 areas you feel like you really excel in, and what are 3 areas you think you might need improvement in. And when we did that in one instance, I knew I had issues with somebody, and we did that. And when we got into that meeting, they went around and they came clean, because they knew they were amongst the leadership team, and they knew how they had been acting and behaving and in low character. And it's not good enough to say they just had a bad attitude. They were acting in low character, and it's not going to be accepted. And so they actually stepped up and owned it. And then when we left that meeting, we said, okay, you owned it. And so by owning it, that means we can all talk openly about it to you when we see it taking place again, and that we'll have this conversation again. So you're addressing it. And if it continues on, then you just, you have to take action on it. And it might not be somebody that you want on your team. But you do want to try to lay the groundwork and have the conversation, and don't just do it in a silo. Do it amongst the leadership team so that everybody understands what the expectations are and that it's not going to be tolerated.
So we talked a little bit about employees and, character and things like that. What other aspects of culture in an environment like this, what other aspects can we bring to the discussion that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I think there's a number of them. Obviously setting goals, and again, we're talking about finances. So we've kind of gotten to the point where we talked about character, and we talked about uniting the team around the character, but then about steering performance. So from a financial perspective, these are all nice things, but how do they help me become a better business? Well, they help you because you're going to steer performance, and you're going to streamline a lot of the things that slow you up from being able to deliver to the consumer or the product or whatever industry you might be in. So they're all consistent with steering performance. And that we built out similar tenets in terms of things that you should be trying to address relative to steering that performance. All of them go into culture. All of them go into making sure that there's no one left behind, that you're involving everybody in the conversation. We built teams because we didn't want anybody, left behind, and we wanted everybody to be able to be a part of a particular goal that we've set out for the BBB. And so, those are some of the critical areas that we want people focused on.
Because one of the unfortunate things in your line is you have to deal with either in an aftermath or in the middle of dealing with companies that are maybe receiving complaints, right? And you're seeing them getting bad ratings, and you can see them struggle. Do you guys, what do you do with those types of companies to, hey, you know what, we're not just here to penalize and shake our finger at you. We actually want to help you see what maybe we could do differently and actually change that culture and actually implement it with the problem children of the community, let's call it,
Well, yeah, it's not even the problem children. It's any business can implement some sort of a incentive program or policy and then find out that it has bad ramifications. I'll give you a perfect example. So yeah, if a company ends up with, say, even a B or C or D or F rating, they typically get upset, and then they want to communicate with us, and we will do a file review, and then we'll meet with them and sit down, and we'll say, based on our review of these complaints, we see a pattern, and maybe we can address that pattern. Well, in one instance, it was a roofing company, and we dug into them, and we said, you know, this isn't being responded to in a timely manner. These 6 complaints all took 3 weeks before you got back in touch, and they started studying it, and they said, you know, I think I know exactly what the issue is. And they realized that they had put an incentive program in with the team lead. So whoever's leading a team on a house, and if that house got a complaint, they would get dinged if there was a complaint on that. They would not get their bonus incentive. And so what's the incentive? The incentive is to not tell the home office that there was a complaint and just say, hey, I'll take care of it, I'll deal with it. And then obviously they get behind, they've got another house and they got another job. And so we were getting all sorts of complaints. And so they implemented a new policy whereby when they signed up to have their roof done, if there's any complaints or disputes, it goes directly to a particular phone number at the home office, and the owner or president of the company received all of those and jumped on them immediately. It solved the problem. And
wow.
So when you say steering performance, you know, they thought they were doing something, you know, really good. Let's give you an incentive if you don't get a complaint. But they didn't realize that the consumer is going to go to that manager that's on you know, at location. And that person didn't want anybody to find out about that complaint. So, I mean, those are ways that we work. I mean, that's one instance. We've had lots of, we've had large businesses with, that we've had conversations with, and we brought up that it's typically an issue of culture, sometimes character when we have these big meetings, but it's culture. And oftentimes they come in thinking it's compliance. We meet all of these compliance regulations. Yeah, but your culture is such that people are not going to operate within the boundaries of your ethics or your expectations. And so they're doing things that you would never want them doing.
Right.
And you're just checking off your compliance code on the left-hand side.
Wow. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I know there's so many different companies with so many different products, with so many different sales strategies and bonus plans and structures and all that stuff. You know, at our office, we have an example where everybody internally in our office, there is no sales. There is no sales bonus. There is no sales agenda. There's none of that. We don't measure things by that type of productivity. We measure things by reaction to a question, a complaint, a call, an email. That's what we measure, activity, not results, because on the leadership side, we know, or let's use the term gamble, we know that if we do the activities right, the results will produce themselves. And you don't let the tail wag the dog, if you will. And I know that can't be done in a lot of companies because, you know, certain people get that, certain companies, whatever. But I'm a big fan of measuring the action. Just like you said right there, I want to reward that person for bringing that complaint to light and helping remedy. I don't want to reward them for low complaints. And so figuring out or sales, right? I mean, a lot of companies now say our service people are not measured by sales, you know, because that now, you know, as long as the company has that holistic mindset. So I like the way you're approaching that. That's interesting.
Well, I mean, it's obvious you're approaching it because it's in the long run, it builds trust. And,
yep.
You know, and I know stories of, you know, one of the largest window manufacturers, they don't get complaints because they said if anybody has a dispute, they're going to redo them. They're going to make it a priority. They're going to get out there. They're going to take care of the customer, no matter what it costs the company. And if all the employees and all the manufacturers, all the people working on the plant, if they know that, if they know that a bad window goes out the door, that the owner of the company is going to foot the bill on that, you think they're going to be sending a bunch of bad windows out the door? No, they say, the expectation is this: if there's a mistake, we're going to address it, and we're not going to look back. And then the trust that we build in the community is going to be off the charts.
Right.
You know, instead of making the decision that, you know, I'm going to spend the next week, you know, arguing about who's right and who's wrong, and that the window's, you know, perfectly fine and they should be happy. You know, it's a whole different mindset, and it comes back to the culture of the organization.
How many times have you heard a referral or a recommendation or some comment online or something? I had a problem and they fixed it right away. How many times did they say that versus I bought Windows and it was perfect, never had any service needs? I don't know, you tell me, but usually the ones that I recollect, it's how they handled those problems when they happen, not, you know, well, I didn't have any problems, so therefore whatever. They respond to the server who fixed the problem because my food was cold. Yeah, they took it back right away. They did all that stuff. So you remember that way more than you remember the problem.
Yeah, I had lots of conversation with business owners around that exact topic, because when reviews first came out, and BBBs were late to the game because we wanted to make sure that we could vet them and make sure that the business had an opportunity to vet them. We wanted them to be authentic, so we put things in place. But when we did, businesses appreciated that they had the opportunity to respond to those before they went public. And then I had to have that same, you know, conversation around consumers want to know that if there's a problem, you're going to take care of it. So you respond to that customer review in a professional way, and that's what they're going to remember. Just like you said, if if consumers can read that you fought with them for 6 exchanges back and forth, they're going to say, I don't want that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if I do, that's the assurance that they'll make it right. Yeah. So yeah. It's a powerful thing, in this idea of culture and how it's introduced, how it's managed, how it flows through a company, through the leadership, and actually from the employee side as well. My apologies, I tried to turn that off. But from the employee side as well, they can drive that too. So I know that we're running over. This is a conversation that I could do for hours. I mean, it really is intriguing, of that internal society within a company and a department and those things. So I really appreciate you sharing this with us. And anything you want to wrap up, and we'll call it a day here.
No, if anybody's interested in going deeper or wanting to meet on the topic, we're always available.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining us. If you want to learn more, reach out to Kip. Also, we'll have the library set up soon. And so thank you so much. And we'll see everybody tomorrow. And Kip, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.